I recently found myself in a situation where I wanted to know what's the best way to upscale first-order ambisonics into third-order ambisonics, and I noticed that there isn't actually much information about that out there. So I felt it is time to create a video about it. And this is what we're going to do today. We're going to look at 5 different plugins that can upscale first-order ambisonics to third-order ambisonics, and we are going to look at the quality of the outcomes, and then we're going to see what's the best one. So without further ado, let's get started. But first of all, hello everybody. In case you're new here, my name is Michael Wagner. I'm a digital media educator with more than 30 years of experience in higher education. And on this channel, I talk about digital media, game design, and spatial audio. Today about Ambisonics upscaling. If any of those topics interest you, I invite you to subscribe or join our Discord community. Invite link is in the description below, or there's also a QR code here somewhere. And with that being said, let's get into our project. I'm going to work with Reaper today, and I'm going to work on a Windows machine. However, all the plugins that I'm going to use today are available for Macs as well, so this is not a limitation. Now, once again, what I want to do is I want to compare the upscaling algorithms of 5 different plugins that promise to be able to upscale first-order ambisonics to third-order ambisonics. And the way I'm going to do that is by starting out with a third-order ambisonic signal first. Then I'm going to drop all the higher-order ambisonics channels in order to arrive at a first-order ambisonic signal. And then I'm going to upscale that back up to third-order ambisonics, and then we are going to compare the outcome of that upscaling with the original signal to see how close the upscaling got to the original signal. So this is essentially the way we're going to do that. Now, the way I'm going to do that here is by first of all creating the ambisonic signal in a 16-channel track. This holds an instance of Dune, and I like to use Dune primarily because it has this very nice one-finger presets that I can use in order to create something that sounds good and doesn't trigger any copyright issues. And this signal is then converted into ambisonics via the stereo encoder from IEM. This is a very nice set of plugins that allows you to work with ambisonics. Going to leave a link in the description below. If you are familiar with ambisonics, you most likely already have them installed on your system. I'm going to use that in order to convert the signal from Dune into an ambisonic signal, and I'm going to, in order to make it a little bit more interesting, I'm going to move that signal around. I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to kind of move it up and also move it around so that we have a little bit of three-dimensionality in the signal. You will see in a second on how that looks and how that sounds. Now, because I need to convert everything back to stereo or binaural so that you can actually watch it on YouTube, this means that you are not going to get a really good impression through listening to the outcomes. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to use the energy visualizer that comes with the IEM plugins, and we're going to visualize the energy field. And this will allow us essentially to see how close the final result is from the original signal itself and how close these visualizations are. So essentially be aware that you're not going to hear much difference, to be perfectly honest. You most likely need to watch the energy visualizer in order to understand what is actually happening and how close the upscaling actually got to the original signal. This track is then routed into a second track that I call the downscaling track, and that track will be responsible for downscaling the third-order ambisonic signal into a first-order ambisonic signal. And the way we're going to do that is very, very simply by just dropping all the second-order and third-order ambisonics channels. This is actually a question I get quite frequently. How do I convert third-order ambisonics into first-order ambisonics? And the answer to that is very, very simple. In a third-order ambisonic signal, the first 4 channels are the first-order ambisonic signal. You just drop everything after that, and then essentially you have first-order ambisonic signal. So this is what we're going to do here. I'm putting a second energy visualizer here that will allow us to compare what the original signal was with the converted first-order signal, but I'm going to come back to that in a second. And then I'm routing this first-order ambisonic signal into an upscaling track, and this upscaling track will hold the plugins that we're going to use in order to upscale to third-order ambisonics again. And then I'm going to route that into a final track. This final track will be responsible for decoding because you're on YouTube, cannot really listen to ambisonics, so I'm going to decode it back to stereo, to binaural to be exact. And this track also holds another copy of the energy visualizer, and here we will be able to visualize the outcome of the kind of upscaling that happened. So by comparing what the original input was with what the outcome will be, we will see sort of how close the upscaling algorithm got to the original signal. Now, the plugin that I'm going to use in order to decode the Ambisonics signal back into stereo binaural is the IEM binaural decoder. I decided to go with the decoder that matches the original encoder that I used. I felt that is probably best practice. So let's listen to a little loop here. Now, as you see, sort of the signal is moving around, and it's going to essentially start at the bottom and then kind of moving around to the top. So starting out at the bottom, kind of moving around. Now it's in the horizontal plane, and then it ends up on top. So let's first convert it into first order Ambisonics, and the way I'm going to do that is simply by using a plugin from the Melda production plugin suite. That's actually one of their free plugins, which is called M Channel Matrix. And all I'm really doing is I'm just going to allow the first 4 channels to go through, and everything else is going to be muted. That essentially means I'm just going to select the first order Ambisonics channels from the third order Ambisonics signal. So let's just enable that here, and then let's open up the energy visualizer for the first order Ambisonics signal. So let's just move that around here a little so that we see it slightly better. So once again, here in the first energy visualizer, we see the third order Ambisonics signal as it was created, and then the conversion to first order Ambisonics, and then we essentially here see the result of that conversion to first order Ambisonics. So let's play the track again. Now, in order to make it a little bit clearer what is happening here, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to reduce the range here so that we get a similar visualization. And what you can essentially see is very typical for that type of downscaling, and that is that you essentially have the same energy distribution. The only difference is that it is not as kind of accurate or not as tight as the original third order Ambisonics signal. So you see it a little bit smeared out, and that is simply because it is missing some of the resolution. We dropped the second and third order Ambisonics channels, so what we are left with is something that has a lower resolution than the original signal, and that's something that you can see here. And our hope is that by upscaling we're going to get that higher resolution back, and we will see if that actually works. But before I get into upscaling, let's first have a look at the 5 plugins that I've selected. Now I have ordered them according to price. I'm going to start with the cheapest one, and I'm going to end with the priciest one, and then we will see if quality and price correlate or not. We'll see. The first one that I'm going to use is one of the Sparta plugins. It's actually a Compass plugin that's part of the Sparta plugin suite. If you're working with Ambisonics, you're most likely aware of those. I'm going to once again leave links in the description below. The nice thing about that plugin is it is completely free, so you can simply download that. It is only available in VST2, but once again, it's free, so who cares? The nice thing also is that this actually can go beyond third order Ambisonics. So if you want to upscale to higher orders, you can do that with this plugin as well. So this is a nice option. The second one is a plugin from Audio Brewers, and this is actually the plugin that originally triggered my quest into figuring out what the best upscaling method is. This is a plugin that came out very recently. It has a couple of tricks up his sleeve that I'm going to talk about in one of the next videos. It actually does a little bit more than just upscaling, but here what I'm going to use it for is primarily for upscaling first order Ambisonics to third order Ambisonics. Now at the time I'm recording this video, this just came out. However, when this video is going to be released, I think there's still a couple of days left in the introductory period. So I think, if I'm not completely mistaken, this video goes live on June 21st. So you still have a couple of days left in order to get it at the intro price. If you're interested in Ambisonics, I highly recommend that one. That's a really good one. But we're going to see how well it actually performs. Now the third one is a very well-known one that comes from the Blue Ripple Sound library, and it's the O3A Harpex Upsampler. And Blue Ripple Sound plugins are known to be of really, really high quality, and we will see if they actually hold their promise today. One of the disadvantages is that it is fairly expensive, and in addition to that, Blue Ripple Sound uses a very unusual, let's call it that way, and a very unusual way of putting all the plugins into one plugin shell. And unfortunately, not all digital audio workstations can work with that plugin shell. In particular, this is a plugin that you cannot use in Cubase, for example, or Nuendo. So that's one of the things to consider if you're interested in these types of plugins. Before you purchase, try them out to be sure that they actually work with your particular digital audio workstation. But they work in Reaper, and we're going to use Reaper, so that's fine. Now, the fourth plugin that I'm going to use is NovoNotes from 3DX. It's a plugin that I really like. Now, I've included it here, even though it's technically not an upscaler. It's really more of a conversion tool. So it's going to convert our first-order Ambisonics into third-order Ambisonics without really upscaling it. I've included it here in order to demonstrate what the difference really is between format conversion and upscaling. However, when we talk about the plugin, be aware that it does a lot of different things. So this is actually a really, really good plugin. I'm just using it not exactly for the purpose it was designed for. And the final one that I'm going to show is the fifth one, is Penteo 16 Pro, which is also an interesting plugin that does a lot of format conversions, and it promises to upscale first-order Ambisonics to third-order Ambisonics. However, it does it a little bit differently, and we will see if that is actually something that we want, or that something that's good, or something that we can actually use. But be aware that this is actually going to work in a somewhat different way than the other plugins. So, and with that being said, let's finally get started. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up the effects window here. Let me just rearrange those windows in order to get everything on screen. I'm also going to open up the energy visualizer at the last track. So once again, what we have here is we have the original third-order Ambisonics signal. This is then downscaled to first-order Ambisonics. This is the second one here. And this is then upscaled with whatever plugin I'm showing here in order to get to the final outcome. So let's first enable the Compass Upmixer, and let's see what the outcome is. And I might need to play around with the range a little in order to get that back, because these plugins can change the gain of the signal. So let me just kind of get that back to maybe 31. I think that works. So as you can see, what's happening here is that you get some of the resolution back. So it's certainly sharper. The distribution is clearer. However, it kind of changes the shape a little. So it's not getting exactly what we originally had. It's just changing things a little, but it does get it kind of, it does make it kind of, it increases the resolution, which is nice. So let's disable that again. And let's use the AB Audio Brewers imager. So this is the result with the imager. So as you can see, this actually works better. It does get the original third-order Ambisonics signal back pretty well, actually. So this is actually a really, really nice solution. It works surprisingly well, actually. Now there's some artifacts here, but these artifacts actually come from they are also in the original signal. If I'm changing the range here, for example, you will actually see that sort of they are coming in. So those are sort of baked into the original signal, and the algorithm sort of just increases those. So if I'm scaling the range down a bit, essentially these artifacts disappear. Okay, so let's switch to the Blue Ripple Sound plugin. Let's maybe kind of set that back to. And But as you can see, the Blue Ripple sound plugin brings it back almost identical. So this is actually one of the things that Blue Ripple sound is known for, the quality of the algorithms. So if you want to get into Ambisonics and you want to have the highest audio quality that you can get, then those are the plugins to go. They are a little bit pricey, unfortunately. I mean, this is just the Upscaler, and the Upscaler alone is 120 British pounds. If you want to get the entire suite of Ambisonics plugins, you're easily ending up in the 4-digit area, so be aware of that. And once again, they're also not working for every single digital audio workstation. So in particular, they're not working in Cubase and Nuendo. But if you're working with Reaper or Pro Tools and you want to get the highest quality, then this is certainly a good way to go. So let's go to the next one. The next one was NovoNotes. And this is a bit of an unfair comparison, because once again, what NovoNotes is doing is, it is really only converting the type of the signal from first order Ambisonics to third order Ambisonics. So it leaves actually the signal completely unchanged. And as I said at the very beginning, in order to get to first order Ambisonics signal from a third order Ambisonics signal, all you need to do is drop the last channels, the second order and third order channels. And that essentially means that you can also convert a first order Ambisonics signal into a third order Ambisonics signal simply by adding empty channels. So adding empty second order and empty third order channels. And this is essentially what NovoNotes is doing. Now, once again, NovoNotes does a lot of different things that go well beyond that, so it is still a really, really good plugin, but I wanted to show this just as a demonstration that conversion from first order Ambisonics to third order Ambisonics doesn't necessarily mean it's actually upscaling. So there's a difference between a format conversion and an upscaling. And then let's go to the final one, and the final one is Penteo. So let's just disable that. Let's enable that. Now this is actually a really interesting one, and it took me a while to figure out what is actually happening here, because the result is completely different to what we have here. And the reason for that is because the Penteo plugin, what it's really doing is, and if I'm wrong, I welcome anybody to correct me, but that's sort of what I read from the manual of the Penteo Pro plugin. What it is really doing is taking the input signal, so the first order input, it's converting that into 7.1.4, and then it's taking the 7.1.4, where you can do some manipulation here, and it's going to convert that into third order Ambisonics. The problem with that in a situation like this is that if you're taking a first order Ambisonics signal and you're converting that into 7.1.4, you're essentially losing a lot of information. So in particular, there's nothing below the listener, right? So kind of everything that's below you've already lost, and even the top speakers are usually kind of not as dominant in a 7.1.4 setup as they are in an Ambisonic signal. So what you're essentially ending up with is a signal that is primarily confined to the horizontal plane. And you can kind of get some of the hit back by just kind of bringing the upper speakers back a bit. But you will never be able to kind of recreate the original signal. So what this plugin is doing is not really upscaling in a traditional sense. What it is doing is converting into something that might be optimized for something like Dolby Atmos, might be optimized for a channel-based layout, but it's not technically not really upscaling to third order Ambisonics. Now, the way the Penteo Pro plugin works took me a little bit by surprise, primarily because it is actually advertised as an upscaler, but it really isn't. So what this really is, it is a conversion tool for different types of channel-based layouts. It is really pricey. The version that you need to use in order to be able to use third order Ambisonics is $500, and if you want to go for the full version, you need to pay $700. So it's a really, really pricey plugin. However, as I said in one of my previous videos, it does have a couple of things that no other plugin can do. So it can convert between a whole bunch of different channel-based layouts. So if you're working in an environment where you need to work with very unusual channel layouts that have a higher number of channels, then this is certainly a plugin that is interesting. But this is a really, really kind of small group of people that kind of need these types of plugins. So for the general kind of population or somebody like me, this is probably not necessarily something that is useful. In particular, in terms of upscaling first order to third order Ambisonics, I would not recommend that plugin because it just changes the signal too much. Once again, which might be good for anybody working in channel-based audio because it optimizes it for certain types of channel-based audio, but it is not really kind of creating an upscaled version of the original first-order Ambisonics signal. So what's my final verdict? And that's actually fairly straightforward. There are really three plugins to me that stood out. Not in terms of quality, and let me just bring those back. So kind of we had the Blue Ripple sound plugin. Now, in terms of quality, that is definitely the highest level of quality that you can get from an upscaler. The Imager from Audio Brewers, to me, is my favorite plugin in that bunch because it is, first of all, it is cheaper, so it's not as expensive, and then it has a couple of tricks up its sleeve that make it really nice. So kind of, my personal preference would be the Audio Brewers plugin here. However, if all you want to do is do some quick upscaling, and quite frankly, you're probably not going to hear the difference much. It's really kind of more the visuals that you see. Then the Compass Up plugin from Sparta, or that is part of the Sparta suite, is perfectly fine as well. So this is really everything I wanted to say today. Thanks again for watching my videos. Now, if you want me to dive deeper into one of those plugins, let me know. I can certainly do a video. There is a video that I'm planning about the Audio Brewers plugin because it has a couple of features that are really interesting and innovative, and I'd like to kind of play around with them a little. Now, this video today was more a personal interest of mine because I really wanted to figure out what the best plugin is for upscaling first order Ambisonics to third order Ambisonics, and now I know essentially the Audio Brewers one. And if I want to be really fancy and very accurate, then the Blue Ripple sound one. But with that being said, if you have any questions or comments, please use the comment section below or join our Discord community. Invite link is in the description below. And otherwise, see you at the next video.